Today I am going to talk to you about an extremely unnerving Australian horror movie called Relic. The story begins with a lady in her early 50s named Kay and her daughter Sam, who are estranged from each other. They are brought together again because Kay's elderly mother Edna has not been seen or heard from in a few days, and they are concerned about her. They drive out to Edna's house to find her. When they get there, the house is locked from the inside, and they must enter through the doggy door. They look everywhere in the house, but Edna is nowhere to be found. Kay feels extremely unsettled, and an intense feeling of dread comes over her as she checks her mother's empty bed and notices a post-it note. Kay and Sam get into unpacking and figuring out where in the house they will sleep tonight, when Kay stops in her tracks as she notices the lounge chair that her mother always uses is facing the opposite direction to the fireplace. It is now facing the window. Kay feels incredibly uneasy, but tries to keep her mind focused on getting to the police station to report her mother as missing. Her daughter Sam asks her what is wrong as she stares at the chair, calling her not Mom, but Kay. Kay brushes her off, unwilling to share her concerns. The police officer asks Kay the usual general question, then promises her he will arrange a search party and asks her for a recent photo of Edna. Meanwhile, back at the house, Sam pushes her way into a partially blocked storage room. Sam looks at an old family photo of them all together and becomes emotional, worrying about where she might be. Suddenly, she hears a noise, like a thud or a movement in the house somewhere, which gives her a shock. She goes to investigate what it is. In the walk-in closet in the storage room, she hears a very strange plastic noise, as if the clothes are moving on their own, but when she shoves them aside, there is nothing there. But she does notice a large patch of mold on the wall. Kay comes back from the police station and tries to make small talk with Sam. She notices that her mother had been putting food out for their old dog Chester, who has long been deceased. Sam is quiet and eating toast, and Kay tries to ask her some questions. Just small talk about work. Sam is very defensive and informs her mom that she is still working at the bar. Kay is critical of her career choices, and it seems as though this is a point of contention between them. Kay then tries to calm the conversation, admitting to her daughter that she is feeling overwhelmed and is not sure what she is supposed to do. Sam responds stiffly, but not unkindly, that Kay is doing her best. The next morning, a search party organized by the police heads into the woods surrounding Edna's house. After several hours searching, she has not been found, but they are told they will regroup again the next day. That night before bed, Sam is having a cigarette on the back porch when she notices Jamie come up to the house. He is a young boy who is a neighbor to Edna, and he often spends time with her. Sam asks Jamie if he has seen Edna, and he surprises her by revealing he hasn't been over to visit in a while, as his father forbade him to. He seems quiet and uneasy, and quickly departs, leaving Sam baffled by his strange behavior. Inside, Kay is dusting when she hits a few keys on the piano, and she decides to sit down to play. She starts to play for Elise, and Sam comes over to ask Kay if the locks on the front door are new. Kay just nods, and comments that she believes her mother must have been scared. Sam looks worried, so Kay explains that Edna rang her a few weeks back, saying that she thought someone had been in the house, but Kay shrugged it off at the time. Now she's regretting not having taken more notice. Sam walks off, angry at her mother's revelation, and puts on a white knitted jumper of Edna's. She reaches into one of the pockets and pulls out another post-it note, on which Edna has written, "Don't follow it." Sam looks at it, disturbed, and then hears a strange thud, as if something is hitting the wall. She jumps, startled, and yells down to Kay. Kay leaves the piano and walks up to the wall to tap on it, hearing a scraping sound, then another sudden thud. Sam comes running over, and they both stare at the wall, where another large patch of mold has grown. They can hear strange movements, as if they are coming from inside the wall. Kay and Sam both go to their rooms to sleep, but Kay has a terrible nightmare about a rotting curse in a wood cabin. She wakes up with a start, and decides to sleep head and tail with Sam. In the morning, Kay wakes up before Sam and puts the cushions back in the lounge, but hears the kettle squealing, to which she turns around in shock. She slowly walks to the kitchen to see her mother standing there, facing away from her, barefoot with her long gray hair down. Kay calls her mother in bewilderment, asking her where she has been. Edna doesn't answer, and acts as if she is unaware of her own disappearance. Kay looks down to notice Edna's bare feet, confused by the entire situation. Sam then comes racing around the corner to cuddle her gran, and Edna laughs. Kay rings the police to let them know her mother has returned, explaining she is not hurt, and that she seems unaware of where she has been. They arrange for a nurse to come and visit her for a health check. The nurse sees that everything is fine, but notices a bruise on her chest. Edna quickly covers it up, saying she must have accidentally hit it, but the nurse says that she will need to be watched for a few weeks, for her own safety. Edna doesn't seem so happy with this arrangement. Kay goes into the laundry room to do some of her mother's washing when she notices blood on one of her nightgown. She storms out to the living room, where Edna is carving a candle, and confronts her mother about where she has been once again. Edna defensively says she simply went out. Kay asks her about all the post-it notes, and Edna just declares she can decorate her house whichever way she feels. Kay then grows frustrated with her mother, and demands to know what happened, but Sam cuts in and defends Edna. Kay storms off in frustration. Later, Sam apologizes to Edna for her mother's behavior. Her grandma hands her one of her treasured rings, and Sam tries to refuse, but Edna insists. Kay is in the storage room catching up on her work while Sam looks through some things and picks up an old sketchbook. She shows her mom a sketch of Kay as a little girl, and then flicks to a page of a sketch of a wooden cabin. Kay freezes and stares at it, explaining that it was on the property when her mom and dad inherited it, and that it was her great-grandfather's abode. She continues that she heard lots of stories of her great-grandfather going mad, but she feels he wasn't cared for like he should have been. She is glad it's not still there, because her mother used to threaten to lock her inside it when she was misbehaving. Sam looks at the picture more closely, noticing that the window in the cabin is the same one in Edna's front door. Kay abruptly asks Sam if she can watch her gran for a few hours the next day, because she is going to look at a retirement home in Melbourne. Sam isn't happy with the idea of shipping her grandma off to a retirement home, but Kay is concerned about Edna's safety and convinced it's the only way. That night, Kay tries to sleep, but keeps hearing someone walking around. Kay walks downstairs to see her mother whispering to herself, repeating that someone is scaring her. She's staring into each corner of the room at something that isn't there. Edna asks Kay repeatedly to look under the bed, but she sees nothing. Edna seems really terrified of whatever it is she's seeing, and Kay is growing increasingly concerned about her mother's apparent hallucinations. The next morning, Kay looks at the retirement home, but after leaving, she breaks down sobbing in her car, not ready for her mother to leave them. Sam went out to get something to eat, returning to the house to hear old music being played, and she smiles as she sees her grandmother dancing by herself, a slow dance. Sam dances with her a little, and then Edna falls into a nostalgic, slightly gloomy mood. Sam asks her if she gets lonely, but she doesn't answer. Then she brings up Jamie, and at first Edna doesn't know who she means, but then she remembers and calls him the retard in a cold manner. This completely shocks Sam, as she has never heard her gran talk about Jamie like that. She decides to change the subject, and asks whether Edna likes the idea of living with Sam for a while. Edna's mood shifts suddenly, and she becomes defensive. Sam reveals that Kay is out looking at a retirement home, but Edna suddenly grabs her hand and asks her why she has her ring, demanding it back, accusing her of stealing it. Sam is shocked, trying to explain that she gave it to her, but Edna keeps grabbing her hand, twisting her fingers to get the ring. Sam pulls off the ring in anger, throwing it to the floor and storming out. She's frustrated and doesn't know how to deal with her grandma's forgetfulness. To calm her nerves, Sam takes a bath, but feels uneasy as she can see the shadow of 2 feet beneath the door. When she calls out to her grandmother, no one replies, but instead the person drags something across the door and moves away. Later, when Kay is home and they are both preparing dinner for Edna, Sam just stares at her grandmother, feeling extremely disturbed by the events of the day. Her grandmother seems unaffected, and won't take her eyes off the candle she is carving. Later that night, Sam hears her grandmother whistling, and finds her staring into her walk-in closet. Edna tells Sam that she thinks this is where the intruder enters from. Sam gets instant chills and becomes very uneasy. Sam joins Kay in the bathroom to brush her teeth, and Kay asks Sam if she is sure she wants to move in with her grandmother. But Sam cannot reply, as her grandmother walks in right at that moment. It is clear, however, that Kay can feel Sam's sudden anxiety around her grandmother. That night, Kay has another dream of the old cabin that used to be on the property, and sees the mold once again, but this time she sees her mother falling to the ground and rotting. The next morning, Sam decides to go to her grand's neighbor's house to speak to Jamie's dad. Clearly there's a story there and she wants to investigate it, hoping it will help her get to the bottom of whatever is going on with Edna. Sam is not prepared for what he explains next. When Jamie came over, Edna apparently locked him in the walk-in closet, the same one she was worried about, and he didn't come home for hours. Eventually, Jamie's dad walked over to find him, and when she answered the door, she denied she had ever seen him, when he could clearly hear Jamie screaming and yelling from inside the house. He pushed past her, only to find him locked in the closet, and when he came out, he was terrified and had been crying. Sam apologizes immensely for what happened to Jamie, and understands completely why they are keeping their distance. Meanwhile, back at Edna's house, Kay is sitting at the kitchen table when she notices her mother walking out into the woods. Finding it bizarre, she follows her out there. She sees her mother walk behind a tree, and as she approaches, she sees her bent over, eating something. She is eating the photos from their old family photo album. Kay rushes over to attract her attention. They struggle together over the photo album, and then her mother walks further off into the woods and begins to dig a hole. Kay walks over quietly, watching her mother dig the hole and put the photo album in it. This is when Edna starts to talk about how she hates the house, and there is something in it. Edna becomes disoriented, asking Kay where everyone is. Kay comforts her, promising she can move in with her and she will look after her. When Sam comes back to her grandmother's, she goes up to the closet and looks at the inside of the door to see the deep scratches that Jamie made when he was desperately trying to get out. Unable to stop herself from investigating, Sam walks further into the creepy closet and looks to her left. She notices that there appears to be another room she hasn't seen before, hidden behind a pile of random items. Sam pulls down the boxes and containers and walks into the space. She sees post-it notes of random sentences like, "My mother has green eyes," and "My name is Edna." As Sam walks forward, she begins to feel overwhelmed and decides to turn around, only to realize she can't find her way out. The walls have literally changed around her, and she can't get back to the closet. She starts to panic and checks her phone, but there is no service. Next, she bangs on the walls, but no one can hear her. Downstairs, Kay has no idea that Sam is trapped in another dimension, and she sits watching her mother, who has hardly touched her food. Edna lifts her face to make eye contact with Kay, and there is an absent yet vindictive expression on her face. Kay stiffens in response and can't stop looking over at Edna's hand, which is shaking. Edna keeps her eyes fixed on Kay as she gets up slowly from the kitchen table, and Kay realizes her mother is urinating on the floor uncontrollably. Kay snaps out of the fear state she was in and helps her mother clean up. Next, we see Edna sitting with her knees up in the bath, and there is a sorrowful look on her face. There are bruises all over the front of her shoulder and chest, almost black like mold. Edna starts to scratch at her chest, and the skin on her chest has got holes in it. Sam is still stuck in the walk-in closet hidden space, trying to find a way to get out. She starts to cry in fear and desperation. At the same time, Kay tries to check on her mother in the bath, but the bathroom door is locked and she can't get in to turn the bath tap off. She calls out to her mom repeatedly, but she gets no answer. Then we come back to Sam, who is continuing to look for a way out, but the more she walks, the closer the walls come in towards her until it becomes narrow like a crawl space. Back to Kay, who is getting even more worried about her mother. She grabs a stool to look through the glass window above the door frame, and in the mirror she sees her mother looking like she is stabbing herself in the chest. Kay wobbles and falls over. She gets back to her feet, pounding as hard as she can on the door, yelling her mom's name. Suddenly the door opens, and Edna faces her like nothing is wrong, even though there is water from the bath pooling at her feet. She nonchalantly walks off with a knife in her hand. Kay rushes into the bathroom to turn the bath taps off, but is too late to save the water getting to the portable heater on the floor, which triggers a complete power trip. Sam, who is crawling on her hands and knees, jumps suddenly with the sudden loss of power. The house is now completely dark, and Kay carries a candle to light her way as she tries to find her mother. She can hear things being thrown and smashed, and she orders Edna to stop it. Suddenly, she comes face to face with her, but she accidentally drops her candle. Meanwhile, Sam is still on her hands and knees, trying to find a way out of the endless narrow crawl space, but it just continues. She starts to breathe heavily in a panic, lying on her back. She notices a wet moldy patch above her, and she uses both of her legs to kick through the drywall above her. She kicks a hole big enough to fit through and comes to another narrow crawl space. Kay comes across the extra closet space as she tries to find where her mother disappeared to. She walks to the back of the closet and down the hall with all the boxes, and then sees her mother squatting in the corner. Kay is frightened, but manages to speak up, asking if they can return. Edna whirls around to reveal a sharp knife sticking out of her left cheekbone, like she has continuously stabbed and poked at it. Edna then turns around and stands up, but her left leg snaps, revealing an almost black bone of the top of her shin poking out the side of her lower leg. Kay screams in horror at this sight, then turns and runs. Back in the endless moldy walls, Sam manages to find a hammer. She eventually smashes through, slightly above the mantelpiece and fireplace. But before she can smash any more, to completely fit through, she hears her mother struggling with Edna. Sam calls out to her mother, who also calls out to her. Then they eventually find each other. Kay urgently tells Sam it is not her grandma anymore, and they must get out. The evil thing that has taken over Edna is coming toward them. They both try as hard as they physically can, until Kay breaks through the wall with an axe and they work to escape before Edna comes. Sam makes her way out and then whips around to grab her mother's hands. But just as she does, Edna pulls Kay back. Sam tries again, pulling with all her might. And finally Kay comes through the wall and lands on the floor inside the living room, followed by Edna, who is holding on to her. Edna lands on top of Kay and is trying to strangle her. Kay kicks her off. And then Sam, who is still frozen in fear, pulls back as Edna grabs onto her ankle. Kay wriggles away and grabs a bat, smashing Edna with it until she falls to the floor. Together, Kay and Sam make their way to the front door. But at the door, Kay stops, much to Sam's disbelief. She professes that she can't leave her mother. Sam urges that it's no longer Edna back there, but it is as if Kay is in a trance. She walks slowly back to where Edna is lying, picks her up, and places her in her bed. Most bizarrely, Kay begins peeling her skin off, until she reveals a blackened skin underneath. She lays down and holds her mother. There is mold appearing, growing on Kay, when Sam enters the room as well and lays behind her mother. Sam succumbs to this atmosphere too, and can't seem to make herself move to get away. All three of them lay there until they decay completely.